Let's talk about lights in After Effects. You can add a light layer into your project, and if you're working with 3D layers, the light will affect the elements that it interacts with. So depending on the type of light and the settings and the material options of the 3D layers, each light can affect different aspects of your scene. You can use lights to illuminate 3D layers and to cast shadows. You can also use lights to match lighting conditions of a scene into which you're compositing various elements or to create more interesting results. Let's take a look at how we can use lights within our project. I'll be working with this project right here where I just have two elements on my screen. I have the whale shark and the sea, and both elements are 3D elements. I'm going to begin by adding a new element into my project, and that's going to be a light. I'll go to Layer, New, Light. The Light Settings dialog box is going to open, and you'll be able to assign a name to your light, and you'll be able to pick the light type. There are 4 types of lights in After Effects. In regards to the different light types, we have 4 choices, so let's just look at these one by one. We'll start off with the parallel light. When you choose a light, you can choose the color of the light. For right now, we'll just use white. You can also specify an intensity of the light. The intensity is the brightness of the light. If you use negative values, you can create a non-light. Non-light will actually subtract color from a layer. So if a layer is already lit by another light, negative values can darken certain areas of the composition. Some of the light types have cone angle and cone feather associated with them. We'll talk about those a little bit later. We also have something called fall off. The fall off is associated with the parallel, spot, and point lights. Fall off describes how a light's intensity is lessened over distance. In addition, we can choose if this light is going to cast shadows. I'll go ahead and leave cast shadows checked. Cast shadows is going to specify whether the light source causes a layer to cast a shadow. In order for this to work, we'll also have to adjust the material options for layers. So we'll look at this shortly. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And as you can see, a new light has been added to my scene. As soon as the light has been added to my scene, you may see some differences appearing within your scene. The parallel light is emitting a directional, unconstrained light from an infinitely distant source. This approximates a light from a source like the sun. If we open up the light layer, we can go into light options and we'll have the ability to change any of these settings that we were looking at earlier. So if I increase the intensity, I can increase the lighting effect within my scene. If we decrease this, the scene will get darker and the light is going to reduce its intensity. I'm going to go ahead and open up another view. So we'll go to 2 views. Here you can see my light. Just like other 3D elements, you're able to transform any of the position properties and the points of interest on the light. I can go ahead and adjust any of the position properties in my light. So if I want to reposition where the light is located, I can grab any of these values and change them. We also have the point of interest. So I can go ahead and change what the point of interest is. This will affect how the light is going to interact or lighten up our scene. From the top view, you can see that I've changed the point of interest so it's pointing towards the whale shark. But from the front view, you can see it's kind of missing the whale shark. We would need to compare this to other views if we wanted it to be on the whale shark. As you can see, if I make changes to this from the various views, it can affect my scene and how the scene is lit. Once again, the parallel light acts more like the sun. So as we make changes to the light, we're not going to see a huge amount of difference. Let's go ahead and collapse this layer and let's create a different type of light in our scene. I'll hide this light just to turn it off. I'm going to go into Layer, New, Light, and this time we'll create a spotlight. Once again, we can assign a color value to the light. We also have intensity, and for the spotlight, we're going to have both cone angle and cone feather. The cone angle is the angle of the cone surrounding the source of the light. This determines the width of the beam at a specified distance. The cone feather is going to control the edge softness of a spotlight. We also have the fall off setting and we have cast shadows. We'll go ahead and just use these default values and click OK. This time the light is going to look a little bit different. As you can see, the spotlight emits light from a source and it's constrained by a cone. This acts more like a flashlight or a spotlight that's used in stage productions. Now if we go ahead and we change the point of interest on our light, you will see that portions of my scene are going to be lit by this specified light, while other areas of the scene will remain dark. If we switch to our left view, I can further dial in how my light is shining on a specific item in my composition. In addition, we can open up the light layer and we'll be able to augment any of the light properties. So if we go ahead and increase the intensity, you can see that we're lighting this portion of the scene. For the cone angle, if I decrease this, you can see how my light now has a more concentrated source rather than being so widespread. The cone feather will make the light softer or harder along the edges. If we up this to 100%, we have a very soft, diffused light. In regards to the fall off, if we change this from none to smooth, you will see that the light doesn't look like it's working at all. And that's because the fall off describes how the light's intensity is lessened over time. If we want to adjust this, we would have to go in and adjust the fall off distance. As I increase the fall off distance, you can see that now this portion of my composition is becoming more lit. The fall off distance is in relation to the position of the light and how far away it is from the element. I'll go ahead for now and just change this back to none. Let's hide this light and let's create another light in our scene. I'm going to do Layer, New Light, and this time we'll pick a point light. A point light shoots light from every direction. The point light emits unconstrained omnidirectional light. It's kind of like the rays from a bare light bulb. Once again, I'm just going to use the default settings and we'll click OK. As you can see, my light has been placed into my scene. If we open up point light and we start to augment any of the settings here, it will affect how the light is going to interact within our scene. If we go ahead and move this light by adjusting the position, it will affect the scene depending on what direction we move the light in. And just like the other lights, if we increase intensity, we can make this portion of our scene become much brighter, or we can make areas of our scene appear much more dim. I'm going to go ahead and hide the point light and we'll add the final light into our project. We're going to add a new light. This time we're going to be using an ambient light. An ambient light is a light that has no source, but rather contributes to the overall brightness of the scene. Ambient light are the only light that will cast no shadows. Ambient lights are good ones to use with color if you want to change the mood of your scene. I'll go ahead and click OK just to create a default ambient light. If we open up the settings, you can see that we have less settings available. All we can adjust is the intensity of the light and the color of the light. So if I pick a different shade for my light, you can see that I'm able to augment the overall color of the scene. This is a great way that you can create mood within your scene. In addition to being able to add lights, you can also combine lights together. When you do this, you can get interesting types of results. Now, of course, if you are going to add multiple lights into your scene, you're going to want to make adjustments to the various values so that they will interact in the way that you desire. Just like everything else within After Effects, in addition to being able to add the lights and augment the various settings, we can also keyframe any of these things. Using these techniques, you can really make a very interesting and dynamic sort of composition. Now that you have an overall idea of the different sorts of lights that are available, what we'll do next is we'll go ahead and add some lights to our scene so that we can start to build something that has more dimension.